On January 9, 1925, in Somerville, New Jersey, Clarence Leroy Van Cleef Jr. was born. He was born to working-class Dutch parents. He had little idea of his film legacy throughout his youth. After high school, he joined Valor in the U.S. World War II Navy, engaged in Pacific Theater minesweeper missions. His military training gave him discipline that translated well on television. Van Cleef worked as an accountant and painter after the war. His career changed when he was cast in a local production and Hollywood scouts saw his strong stage presence. His silent, nasty gunslinger role in High Noon was his 1952 film debut. Though it was a minor role with no lines, his arresting presence was memorable. Van Cleef's high cheekbones, hawk-like nose, and fierce gaze made him stand out in Hollywood, but it was his strength. He played supporting villains in many westerns and crime dramas in the 1950s and 1960s. He rarely received prominent billing during this era, but his performances as henchmen, outlaws, or ICE assassins were always unforgettable. The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance, 1962, Kansas City Confidential, 1952, and The Big Combo, 1955, showed his ability to command the screen with little conversation. In 1958, a near-fatal vehicle accident crippled his knee, and his acting career seemed ended. Van Cleef's career took a spectacular turn in the 1960s, making him a cinematic icon. He starred opposite Clint Eastwood in Sergio Leone's 1965 spaghetti western For a Few Bucks Extra. Colonel Douglas Mortimer, played by Van Cleef, was a steely bounty hunter seeking revenge. His performance astonished spectators and critics, showcasing charisma and nuance that had been underutilized in his prior performances. His ascension to leading man status was rare for performers who had previously played villains. In 1960 SIX's The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, he played Angel Eyes, Leon's cold-hearted, calculating triad villain, alongside Eastwood. The film made Van Cleef famous worldwide. Van Cleef thoroughly embraced spaghetti westerns, unlike many actors who faded with westerns. Later, starring in European westerns in the 1960s and 1970s. Sabata, 1969, Death Rides a Horse, 1967, The Big Gun Down, 1966, and Day of Anger, 1967. He became known for his stoic intensity and moral ambiguity with each play. His film presence was calm authority. He spoke quietly, but was always threatening. Van Cleef's characters were smart, calculated, and driven by own rules of justice, even if they walked ethically ambiguous roads, unlike other Western actors. He symbolized the modern Western anti-hero archetype. His quiet honesty, influenced by personal struggle and experience, earned him respect beyond his acting. Television and action-adventure films increased Van Cleef's career in the 1980s. He played autocratic police commissioner Hawk in Escape from New York, 1981, and led the 1984 NBC series The Master, portrayed a retired ninja. Though these subsequent efforts had mixed results, they showed his ability to adapt to entertainment business trends. Lee Van Cleef has several notable relationships throughout his Hollywood and beyond career. 1943 was his first marriage to Patsy Ruth Cale, a union that began during World War II, when Van Cleef was just starting his acting career after leaving the Navy. As he established himself in the industry, Patsy Ruth, his constant partner, supported him. Their family had 3 children. They got 2 daughters and a son. The duties of parenting and a growing acting career put pressure on Van Cleef, who often had to choose between film sets and his young family. The couple's relationship was damaged by the challenges of public life, despite their long history together. Lee and Patsy divorced in 1958 after 15 years, ending his first and longest marriage. Joan Marjorie Drain was Van Cleef's second wife in 1960. Joan entered his life as his acting career was changing. Hollywood gave him highs and lows, and was rehabilitating from a late 1950s vehicle accident that nearly destroyed his cinematic career. Joan gave him emotional support and friendship as he recovered in the profession. This 14-year marriage was crucial to Van Cleef's professional comeback, especially in Europe, where he became famous for spaghetti westerns like For a Few Euros Extra and The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. Joan supported him as he reached new heights of fame. Like his first marriage, this one ended in 1974. The causes for their breakup are unknown, but celebrity, travel, and the entertainment industry may have contributed. Lee Van Cleef married Barbara Havalone in 1976, his third and final marriage. Van Cleef was already a global star, especially in Europe, due to his dominating on-screen presence and unusual features that made him a recognizable and scary figure in Western cinema. His wife Barbara was a steady and stabilizing influence in his final years in profession. She supported him through his final years in film and chronic health concerns from his vehicle accident and lifelong smoking. They married until his 1989 death, leaving Barbara the widow of a legend whose performances live on. Her efforts to honor him after his death showed her commitment and devotion. Fans remember her as the woman who supported Van Cleef at the end of his great career. Lee Van Cleef, the steely-eyed gunslinger with the distinctive presence, became one of Hollywood's most memorable tough guys. Not all of his collaborations with Hollywood's biggest stars were cordial. Van Cleef was frank and professional, and he didn't tolerate fools or egos. He reportedly had personality difficulties, artistic disputes, or contempt with some actors behind the scenes. The 6 actors Lee Van Cleef hated most are listed here. Lee Van Cleef and John Wayne had a tumultuous relationship. Both were Western film icons, yet they differed in personality, politics, and professional respect. While Wayne was the all-American, flag-waving, studio-backed cowboy, Van Cleef was known for his grittier, European spaghetti westerns that embraced moral ambiguity and cinematic realism. Van Cleef was a craftsman who broke into acting with uncredited roles and villainous roles. He hated how Wayne, backed by John Ford, ruled the genre with entitlement. Crew members on overlapping studio lots said Van Cleef found Wayne arrogant and condescending. The Duke reportedly called European westerns cheap cowboy films. Van Cleef, who rose to stardom in Sergio Leone's For a Few Dollars More and the Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, felt insulted. Though they never worked together, there were rumors that Van Cleef turned down a tiny role in a John Wayne film because he didn't want to be a studio puppet. He called Wayne Hollywood's mascot in private and shunned him on red carpets and press tours. Western insiders knew about the competition, which was never reported. Charles Bronson, brooding alpha's battlefield. Both Charles Bronson and Lee Van Cleef were rough, laconic, and passionate screen presences who could carry a film with a scowl. Van Cleef apparently resented the comparisons and disliked Bronson, especially in the 1970s when both were at their European peak. Bronson's major role in Sergio Leone's Once Upon a Time in the West, which Van Cleef wanted, may have been the tipping point. Leone picked Bronson over Van Cleef for the lead. This was apparently a professional betrayal, and Van Cleef questioned Leone's allegiance. Van Cleef later mocked Bronson's wooden performance, saying a block of granite could exhibit more emotion. When they briefly met during overlapping productions in Spain, tension was so high that producers staggered their shooting schedules. Van Cleef, a theatrical and method actor, felt Bronson's stratospheric ascension offensive since Hollywood rewarded style over substance, despite both performers being stoic professionals. 3. Clint Eastwood. Protégé to Scourge. Clint Eastwood, who helped make Lee Van Cleef famous, is among the more surprising inclusions. Their collaboration in For a Few Dollars More in Good, Bad, and Ugly was legendary. Behind the scenes, their relationship was far more tense. Van Cleef first admired Eastwood's calmness and determination, but when his fame exploded in the 1970s, he felt forgotten. He thought Eastwood had used their partnerships as a springboard and turned his back on the actors and directors who assisted him. Eastwood's acting-to-directing switch increased the divide. He didn't cast Van Cleef in later westerns like High Plains Drifter or Pale Rider, roles he thought were perfect for him. In the early 1980s, Van Cleef reportedly approached Eastwood's production company for collaborations, but was politely refused. In interviews, Van Cleef was diplomatic yet forceful. Clint stated he went Hollywood. He's chosen cameras and cocktails over dust and dirt. Industry insiders confirmed the two luminaries' coldness, though Eastwood never responded. 4. Telly Savalas. Van Cleef met Kojak actor Telly Savalas in the 1970s, when both were common in European crime and action flicks. Savalas' flamboyance and ego-driven celebrity apparently bothered Van Cleef. Van Cleef was a disciplined and quiet professional, while Savalas liked the spotlight and caused havoc on sets. In a brief, overlapping production in Italy, Van Cleef allegedly left because Savalas mocked his acting approach as stone-faced, squinting on adjacent sets. Their characters were oil and water. Savalas was the noisy, cigar-chomping scene stealer, while Van Cleef was a controlled threat. Van Cleef reportedly rejected subsequent proposals to pair them due to creative incompatibility. "I hate that guy," said diplomatically. 5. Cowboy-hatted Yul Brynner was ego. Van Cleef also disdained Magnificent Seven star Yul Brynner. Both performers were Western actors, but Van Cleef thought Brynner was excessively theatrical and self-conscious. Their differences were aesthetic and philosophical. Van Cleef was raw, grounded, and intense, while Brenner was charming and aloof. Van Cleef met Brenner at various European film festivals and award events, but he found him arrogant and contemptuous. One legendary behind-the-scenes incident has Brenner rejecting a co-starring part alongside Van Cleef because he didn't want to play a second-string gunslinger. Van Cleef never forgot that comment and called Brenner a Hollywood elitist. In a 1985 European interview, Van Cleef named Henry Fonda, Franco Nero, and Charles Bronson as actors he admired, but not Brenner. The omission was telling. 6. A clash of cool, James Coburn. James Coburn, famed for his charm and coolness, may seem like an unusual target for Van Cleef. The conflict was apparently caused by Coburn's laid-back acting style and inclination to overshadow others. Van Cleef, who had to struggle for Hollywood recognition, thought Coburn had coasted into celebrity on charm rather than craft. An alleged unpleasant episode occurred when both performers were considered for the same European Western lead role. Van Cleef accused the filmmakers of choosing swagger above content when Coburn got the role. After hearing Coburn quip in an interview that it always appears like someone stole his horse, Van Cleef became bitter. The comment was presumably joking, but Van Cleef, a serious, proud artisan, took it as an insult. Van Cleef urged younger performers not to emulate Coburn unless they wanted to sleepwalk through their careers, yet they were never openly hostile. Lee Van Cleef was a perfect professional on set, but his creative integrity and dislike of arrogance, favoritism, and studio politics caused him to hold grudges against Hollywood's top personalities. Whether it was ideological disputes with John Wayne, personal treachery from Clint Eastwood, or personality clashes with Savalas and Brenner, Van Cleef's Hollywood rivals show his dedication to the profession and refusal to play the fame game. The man who was the worst, and proud of it, is further enshrined in these rivalries in cinematic history. Van Cleef worked in films until his death on December 16, 1989, despite having heart illness in the 1970s and a pacemaker in the 1980s. He collapsed following a heart attack at home in Oxnard, California. Secondary causes of mortality included throat cancer.